Hello, everyone. Wow, I was just feeling inspired to do a little live here today. So I had another update, another vision, following on the thing I shared the other day, whether you caught that or not. I had a vision of the false matrix, the grid that surrounds planet Earth, and that many of us have been experiencing being limited by. So this morning I received a download, a vision of where in our bodies we have been invited or are being invited to unhook from this false matrix and to start creating and living from the field of light. So, first of all, what is the false matrix? So the false matrix is like the operating system. You can think of this as like the operating system on your computer, and it's got all these apps and everything in it. And when you upgrade your computer, like I just recently got my MacBook replaced, new MacBook, it's got a new operating system, and some of the applications that were working in the old one are no longer working in this one. So I'm having to upgrade. So this false matrix, like a grid that surrounded planet Earth, was the operating system for many, many, many years and millennia, and is the programming there basically runs on fear. Having you doubt yourself, having you second guess yourself, any of the fear-based programming that kept separation in place, had you believe in the illusion that you're separate from the light that you are, which is, of course, when we think about it, actually impossible. Yet we have had that play out in so many ways that our identities have been based on it. So in this vision I had the other day, this matrix grid that surrounds the Earth, people were hooked into it. It's like having umbilical cords that were being fed by this matrix, this false matrix grid. And in that grid were holes. Very exciting, because these holes were there where light was just pouring through. And beyond this false matrix is the field of light, our source field, truth. And as more and more and more of us choose to be the light that we are and to unhook from any of the ways that we have been fueled by that false matrix, that grid, you are allowing yourself to be sourced and fueled by the field of light, the source field, then being in your presence will start to automatically amplify that light frequency in others and making it easier for others to be able to unhook as well. Now, where this gets super interesting is I was noticing, I don't know how many of you have experienced being really good at manifesting in some areas of your life, and then in some other areas, it's like you hit a wall. It's like you just can't seem to create something that's really, really meaningful for you, or something that you really desire. You know, like maybe a parking space is easy, but when it comes down to manifesting something in your life that's near and dear to your heart, and it just hasn't quite happened yet, what I'm about to share with you may shed a bit of light on what's been going on. So for many, over the years, many of us have been on this path for a long time, clearing, releasing all the limitations and the programming and all of that stuff. One of the things that I noticed is that for many on this path, being sensitive and being, you got a big heart, you care, and you love to see, people thriving. You love to see everybody happy on the planet. Of course, that is not always possible. So over the years, many of us have bought into the confusion and the misperception that having clear boundaries means having walls and barriers up. So if you've ever had your heart broken, you felt hurt, you felt judged, criticized, rejected, ridiculed, any of that stuff, and it really hurt your heart, and you put walls and barriers up to protect yourself, and those walls and barriers have been confused with having clear boundaries, as in saying yes to what works for you and no to what doesn't. When your boundaries have been overstepped, then that will, and if that's been confused with walls and barriers, then you shut your heart off. Now, that may have worked to supposedly keep you safe from any more harm coming in, but it also kept out what will actually nourish and support you, what actually fills your heart, right? Having walls and barriers up is not helpful. So letting those walls and barriers come down around your heart is something that many of us, including myself, have definitely been experiencing over the last few years, letting that come down. It's a healing process, releasing the grief, releasing the heartache, all of that, and learning to trust again, right? So where this was getting interesting, what I saw this morning, suddenly something clicked into place, is that the three key centers for us to connect with are our vision center, your third eye area, being able to connect in with your perceptual filters, your ability to perceive beyond the ordinary senses, and our heart center calls in connects in with our feelings, and then the sacral chakra area, so that's second chakra. Now, where I was shown that many of us may have experienced a sense of like getting results in some areas of your life and not in others, is that just like we had walls and barriers around the heart, that sacral chakra has had walls and barriers put up instead of healthy, empowering boundaries. Now, the sacral chakra, that second chakra, is incredibly vital for your creative life force energy, your creative cauldron, if you like. It's the womb area. Now, whether you're in a male or female body is irrelevant. We all have that energetic center there. So that creative cauldron, in that creative cauldron space, in that second chakra, if there has been any trauma, any shaming around having desire, any shaming around sexuality, potent life force, any guilt or blaming or any pain or having your boundaries overstepped, as in your no not being honored and your yes not being appreciated or acknowledged, and you've put walls and barriers up around your sacral chakra, then again that may have worked to energetically protect yourself. It also kept a barrier in place as to what you can allow yourself to receive, how much joy you can allow yourself to experience, and how much joy you will allow into your creative expression, and letting that life force energy give birth in the world to the light that you are. And whether that be through physical babies or whether that be through creative babies, in whichever way. So anywhere that you may have ever put walls and barriers up around that sacral chakra because there's been traumatic experience, like I said, for many, what I've noticed over the years, and I've been facilitating energy healing work for over 30 years in one form or another, and pretty much one consistent theme over these years is that when enough safety has been created in, first of all, healing all those woundings that were held in the heart where those walls and barriers were up, and you've created a safe enough space for you to trust the light that you are and re-establish that trust, that relationship with source, the divine, and letting all that other stuff, that gunk, be released, yet there will come a point where you feel safe enough to go to those places that you haven't wanted to go, or were scared to go, or were afraid to go, or just didn't know where to go. And that's when we get access into the places that have been traumatic for us. Many of those have been stored on an unconscious level. And where this gets really interesting is where if you have carried genetic ancestral trauma imprints, and they are held in your body, and you're trying to process those ancestral lineage traumas, then you can't clear what's not yours. So if you've taken it on and identified that as being yours, and that is still there, having these traumatic imprints in your body, in your field, and having walls and barriers up around you instead of healthy boundaries, and saying this works, yes, this works, no, and creating that space around you. If those walls and barriers are up, then what will start happening is that you'll find that when you connect in with what you truly desire, and if there's been any shaming around having desires, any religious programming that said that having desires is not spiritual, you got to let that go. It's the attachment to anything to be let go of. But anywhere that you may have shamed yourself for having desires and thereby blocked yourself off, then it's like having a glass ceiling. You've experienced a glass ceiling and upper limit where you can't, with money, they often talk about this, right? That when you hit your glass, your upper limit, your unconscious upper ceiling, you can't seem to bust through that. And so energetically, when you have walls and barriers around you, and this is blocking this sacral chakra area, this creative womb, the creative cauldron within you, because there have been times where you were told you were too happy, too joyful, too this, too that, too much, not enough. And you internalize that, add into that any of the trauma imprints that you've carried from your ancestors, those who've gone before you, that are in the genetic coding. And when you, and that stuff, by the way, is all informed by the false matrix programming based on fear, keeping you in separation from the divinity that you are. And any of that stuff is held in your body, then it's like having an invisible barrier around you that lets the stuff that you are, the stuff I'm just saying, whatever it is that you are sending out, your intentions, you're sending the intentions with your mind, you're visualizing it, you're seeing it, you're feeling it with your heart, and it's amazing. And some things will come up into your life, boom, like that. And then there are those other things, and it's like they are parked outside this energetic barrier and this invisible barrier and can't come in until the walls and barriers have been let down. Now, that sounds simple enough, right? Yet knowing that, wow, this is in fact really simple, but letting those walls and barriers come down will bring up the unconscious aspects of you that do not want to let this go. And this can show up in ways, I tell you, that will blindside you. I've had quite a few experiences lately of facilitating sessions with the most amazing ladies who were willing to go there, to go where others fear to go. Really, it's just treading into those places where you've got judgments about yourself and being willing to go there and to let that fear-based programming go. So imagine for a moment, and hi, Anne, good morning. And if you're joining live and you haven't authorized the Melon app, by the way, then to see your name, then I just leave your name in the comments and I can see who you are. If you got questions, go ahead and post. And if any of this resonates or you're curious about anything that I'm talking about, go ahead and post. I'll see it here. Anyway, what I've noticed there is that being willing, when asking for yourself, for example, so if you've cleared a lot of stuff and you've got the walls and barriers down around your heart, and you've got that part there, wow, okay, my boundaries, I'm practicing this, saying yes to what works for me and no to what doesn't. Noticing where in your life you've been tolerating things, where you've been putting up with things or people, situations, and then noticing there, if you were to fully unplug from this false matrix, which gets hooked in place by the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the procrastinator, the judgments, the comparison-nighters, all that stuff, by worrying, any of the fear-based programming. If any of that stuff, if you were able to let all of that go, if you were able to exit this false matrix, which you can, and you were to fully allow yourself to be lifted out of this false matrix, let your umbilical cord that's been fueling you from that false matrix be unhooked, unplugged, and plugged into the source field of light, would you? And just noticing like what may be holding you back. And there will be some version it's like if we're doing a Google search in your inner database as to stepping into the unknown, which to the mind, to the ego, this will be stepping into the unknown. You've had glimpses, expeditions into that field of light. You've had experiences of it. And in truth, you know it because that is what you are. And you recognize it, you know it, it's you. Yet it may not have been able to be fully grounding being lived here in this reality, partially because that false matrix was really covering the planet until not that long ago. These holes started appearing, letting the light come through. And as that grid is disintegrating, as all this light is flooding the planet and is flooding into the consciousness, people are starting to wake up and see what was hidden before. Yeah, and I've had that happen in my own life with areas, and I'm sure that you have too. And you can see it all over the world. And it would seem if you go by the distractions that are being played out and you buy things at face value as what appear outer appearances, that is not what is going on. Being able to look beyond that and tune into what is the energy behind what is being said or what is being broadcast will give you a much clearer sense of what's actually really happening. So unplugging from that false matrix and fully letting yourself be plugged into, fueled by that source field of light, and then creating from that place means creating what brings you joy, creating what brings you peace, harmony, ease, flow, all those essence state qualities that we experience when being the light. And yet, as inviting as that sounds, it calls for a willingness to release those unconscious aspects of us that will be attached to holding on to parts of that false matrix. It was like, well, one little line I'll just keep in there. It may be because, I've heard this one a lot, the fear of leaving those you love behind, the fear of not being able to have anybody to relate to anymore, not being able to connect, the fear of losing whatever it is that you're afraid of losing, the fear of stepping into the unknown and not knowing what that's going to be like. How is that going to be any better or any different than what you've had? You may as well stay what you know, that kind of stuff. So whatever it is, this is really, really fascinating. So anyway, when those aspects, when those walls and barriers come down around that sacral chakra, around that cauldron of creation, that beautiful, potent life force energy, and that center by just below your belly button, and your heart center and your vision center are all open, walls and barriers down, you've got clear boundaries around you, then letting the energy, that source field, the field of light flow through you, it's like a self-sourcing system that is constantly filling you, regenerating you, rejuvenating you. When parts of you, and this I've definitely noticed that happening in my own body and in my life, I noticed that sacral chakra, there was some stuff in there. I had an amazing clearing session the other day with releasing some trauma. And when that aspect has, or any aspect of you is still being hooked into that false matrix, then it's like you may be tapped into the field of light and you're filling up, maybe doing meditation or doing something that really is where you're in your flow. And yet when the aspects of you, or even if it's just one tiny little strand that is still connected into that false matrix, then it's like fueling, having your car at the petrol station, the fuel station, and filling up with fuel while the tank has got a leak in it. And so you're filling up, and depending on how much of your energy is being fueled by that false matrix, that hole is there and you're filling up, and it's just not sustainable. You can't, as soon as you fill up, boom, it's instantly depleting. When you unhook fully, completely from that false matrix, and all of you is now being fueled and sourced by that field of light, it's like you start replenishing, filling up, and then being able to give from a space of overflow. And I know for myself and many of you that I have spoken with over the years, that for many of us, we've experienced that sense of overflow in some regard, and yet not completely landing. And that was not because there was anything wrong with you or that you were doing anything incorrectly. It was partially the timing and this grid now having the openings in that the light is coming through so much more easy. It's more easy to sustain this connection while being here in this body. So being the conduit for the light to flow through, to be expressed in the world in your unique way, and thereby increasing your frequency, elevating your frequency, and broadcasting higher frequency in the world. But in order to be able to broadcast that or to let that light come in, you got to make space for it, right? So you got to let go of the old habits, the conditioning, the agreements, the vows, the oaths, the promises, the pledges, the commitments, all the stuff, much of which has been held in the unconscious, and letting that go will bring up resistance to whatever degree it does. So anyway, when all of this is flowing, and this is inevitable, it's not a question of, oh, is this possible for me? Absolutely, it's possible for you. Will it happen for you? Absolutely, it will. And as that light is flowing through stronger, 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 and it's being amplified, and every time that you increase the light quotient in your body, in your field, you're sending out a stronger signal that is being transmitted from you to your environment, rippling out through the world. And it's like a ripple effect. And we are all supporting each other with turning up the light, being the light. And then at some point, we reach that tipping point where I've seen it happen in people in my own life that I was like, wow, I didn't think I'd see the day where they would be fill in the blank. Opening to spirituality, or opening to energy work, or opening to any of the stuff that I was doing. And all of a sudden, you were talking about mystical experiences as if it's like we're having a cup of coffee, which is how I talk with all my mystical friends. Yet having that with what I labeled my everyday friends who were not open to that previously, all of a sudden they are. And you may start finding that more and more and more. And then as we are here, I love that saying that we're all just walking each other home. We're all just reminding each other of the truth of what we are. And sometimes that means that there will be aspects of us we all have our blind spots. One of the key things with that sacral chakra area is releasing any of the false support. I realized this the other day. I've spoken about false loyalty and false support, and realize that, whoa, actually the false loyalty is what is connected in with the heart center. You pledge that loyalty, you have a loyal heart. That false support is what has been hooked into the sacral chakra. So if you haven't experienced feeling truly supported for being you, and you may not have received the support that you require to thrive, for you to be who you are, and thereby all these other people-pleasing programming and all of that started kicking in, then you have become used to a false support system. And the false support system was fueled by that false matrix driven by fear. Not good enough, all of that kind of stuff, right? So as you unplug from that and you allow yourself to be filled with the source field of light, and allowing yourself to open up to receive and experience what it actually means, what it feels like, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it tastes like, to be supported, true support, being the light that you are here in this body. That means that a whole lot of stuff will come up that can bring up feelings of like, oftentimes when when you get a new awareness of something and you see what you tolerated or put up with, it can bring up this rage from inside. It's like you have to flip through the other end of the spectrum maybe for a little bit to get to the unexpressed emotion, to land in that center space and realize, wow, that was interesting. I'm no longer willing to allow that in my space. And yeah, there you go. It will fuel you to keep moving forward. So I'm really curious, what of this, if any, resonated with you? What's landed with you? If you got any questions about this, I'll be sharing more about this over the months to come as more is revealed. Just know that for each and every one of us, it is absolutely possible. And it is, if your commitment is to being the light that you are, being what you came here to be, then getting all these three energy centers fully unplugged, unhooked from the false matrix is not only necessary to liberate you, it's also, you are authorized. You are the author of your life. You are the authority. You are authorized to set yourself free. And you can claim that, and you can choose that. And then it may take a little while for the old habits that were created from the old based on the old fear and the lack and the scarcity and the struggle, it may take a little while for the disbelief and the habit of doubting and second guessing yourself, questioning things, wanting guarantees, all of that. It may take a little while for those habits to be released as you create new habits. And Anne is saying resonates totally, makes such sense. The sacral being blocked, drained by false support. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And it's like, you know how when sometimes you've known something and you've spoken about things, you've read about things, you've had an inkling of something, and all of a sudden you get a whole fresh perspective on it, and it's like everything just lines up. Oh, this is kind of what I've experienced this morning. And the beauty is that it feels like over we are right in the equinox energy, beautiful balancing point. We've had an amazing full moon. There was a lot of light and support available for us. And when you allow yourself to be uplifted into the light that you are, allow the light that you are into those areas in your life where you've been struggling, where you've been feeling overwhelmed, where you've been lacking confidence, where you've been confused, where you've been afraid or experiencing anxiety. Allowing the light that you are into those places, and then see what happens. And Leah, yay, Leah saying, what a blessing to watch you immediately after coming out of a rebirth, reborn meditation. Oh, yes. Wow, that's fantastic. Fantastic timing. Beautiful to be here. Anne is saying, divine masculine role is supporting that divine feminine creative space. So masculine out of balance, sure, a hook to false matrix. Yeah, and there have been lots and lots of different ways that this will play out. And there's not a one rule for everyone thing. We all tend to have our own flavors and our own, maybe a slight tweak difference. And then when you get it, it's like, that's how it was working. And then you can choose to let it go. And when, it's over the next few months, just really having this awareness and then realizing that, wow, you can choose this if you like, to be fully liberated from this false matrix and to no longer agree to play by the rules of fear and the game of fear, saying, no, that's fear mongering. I am no longer willing to participate in that. I am choosing to be fueled and informed by the field of light. And it's going to take a little while. As I said, those habits have been there for a long time, based on the default programming from before, to create new habits takes a little while. And Yogi Bhajan, I always love that. Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini Yoga to the West, said it takes 40 days to change a habit, 90 days to confirm the habit, 120 days to be that new habit, and 1,000 days for mastery. And so one way to notice what comes up for you is to say, wow, as all of this shifting, every day I recommit to being the light I am, no matter what. And I'm allowing the light into every area of my life, no matter what. And that will bring up resistance. It will bring up the parts that want to control. That'll bring up the parts that want the guarantees, that want to run the show. And I say, wow, all aspects have had a function, whatever role they've played. I am now willing to let the light into those aspects, into those roles, letting them be released and elevated into the light. And what becomes possible then? When you are fully tuned in to that source field of light and you're able to sustain that here in your everyday living, letting that light all the way through requires creating space. So that means letting go of all the resentment. It requires letting go of the grief. It requires letting go of the blame, of the shame, the disbelief, the doubt, everywhere that's been stored, the lack of confidence, any of that. Clearing that out. And every time that you clear out yet another layer, then more of the light that you are can flow in. And then there will come a point where that the aspects of us that we may have called shadow side before, the places we didn't really want to look at, so much light is flowing into those places. You feel so much compassion for those aspects of you, those parts of you, that even those parts that have been really resistant to let go and to release will melt and dissolve, come home in your heart, and you allow that beautiful sacral energy to receive the healing that it required. If there's been any trauma, especially if there's been sexual trauma, sexual abuse, whether that was physical or implied, that's also show up in many ways. But if there has been any sexual trauma, it is so important to let those walls and barriers come down. Have very clear boundaries in place, and clear boundaries in place when there has been trauma in the sacral chakra, especially when that's sexual energy involved, and abuse of that. Overstepping, for instance, if you were with somebody, even if it was an consensual relationship, and you said no and your no wasn't honored, then putting walls and barriers up there as a protective mechanism, shutting yourself off because you have not felt safe having boundaries, or your boundaries not honored, any way that was confused, right? Then it requires practice saying yes, and it requires practice saying no, and being fully aligned with your yes and no, and meaning that for yourself, that it's absolutely unwavering, and that will be respected by others. But that takes practice too. So it's so important to let yourself start experiencing what boundaries mean to you, practicing saying yes and no, this works for me, this doesn't work for me, asking for what you need and what you require. And that leads me back to where I was going before, is that in that sacral area, having the false support there will also very often play out, especially if you've done energy work already, and if you facilitate informational work for others, for example, is that there can be a real hesitation to allow yourself to ask for support from others and to receive the support that you require. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, somewhere in the way there it's been like, well, I should be able to do this myself. Anytime that there's a should, that, ooh, that's a little flag there. Yeah, sure, you can facilitate. I can facilitate this deep, deep, deep transformational work with others. And there are aspects of me that I can't see, blind spots I have, areas where I cannot support myself in the way that I support others. So I require support from others to assist me through the times that I need that. And being willing to ask for that is actually coming from a place of knowing yourself, what you require. It is not weak, which is often what is implied. If you ask, then you're weak and you're needy. What a load of BS that is, right? So letting all of that be cleared, released, dissolved. Practice asking for what you want, what you need, what you require, what you desire. Starting within yourself and then playing with asking in your environment. So much juiciness that we can dive into more. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm going to log off. I'd love to know what has been most valuable for you from this sharing here. And by the way, the Uplifters Nation Facebook group is now open. It's our private group. If you're in the Soul Food Sanctuary, we're going to be transitioned. That's going to be archived. We're going over to the Uplifters Nations. If you like to stay connected, then do come and join us in the Uplifters Nation. If you're watching this in the Uplifters Nation, yay, you're already there. And if you're watching this on my page of the Uplifters Nation and you'd like to actually interact with others in the group, then do come and join our Uplifters Nation group. We have an Uplift community call tomorrow. I'm going to be revealing the vision that came to me last year of the Uplifters Nation, how this is about collaborating in a whole new way, and how important it is for all of us who are uplifters to not only be uplifting, but to allow ourselves to be uplifted. Yeah, so when that sacral chakra is nurtured and you feel safe enough to let all those trauma imprints go, part of being able to let all that go is allowing yourself to receive support. And if that is something that you would love to have my support with, then just leave me a message, and I'm happy to just have a chat. We'll hop on a call and let's see how I may be able to support you. Now let's see. I got asking wasn't. I'm not sure who was posting. Anne is saying this. Okay, asking was an area full of confusion from an early age, as Dad used to make me go ask for things from strangers be responsible beyond my years, then the flip side of don't go asking and bothering others. There's no such word as can't, so just get on with it. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? Well, in Dutch there's a saying, kinderen die vragen worden overgeslagen. Children who ask get skipped. And so how are you supposed to feel comfortable asking if you don't want to be skipped and be left out? It's like there is so much confusion created around asking that it can be really uncomfortable. So you may even want to just play with, where have you prevented yourself from asking? And if you're unable to ask, whether that be from source, whether that be from others, whether that be from yourself, and you have push-pull definitions of asking means that you're needy, that you're pushy, that you're greedy, that you're blah, 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 whatever, and you don't want to be that blah, 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 then you just don't ask, and then you don't receive, and so the loop goes on. Because you don't feel safe, you don't feel supported. Letting yourself receive support with that to bust through those limitations, unhook from that false matrix, and fully plug into that source field of light. Well, there's lots of support available. And by the way, if you would like to come and play in the Elevate Your Frequency, that's my new program. It starts next week, and that's going to be an amazing journey. I've been facilitating the Elevate Your Frequency private journey with a couple of ladies in private mentoring, 6-month program. That's just absolutely been extraordinary. At the end of every session, I ask them both, each in their own sessions, what's been most valuable for you from today? And without fail, every time they say everything. And then we'll pull out a few nuggets that were particularly pertinent. So that's been an amazing journey for me to be on, to facilitate that and to have these upgrades coming in and being able to share that with you. So if Elevate Your Frequency is something you're interested in, then come and join us. All right. Anne is saying, so beautiful, be able to receive such help from you getting through all this. Oh, you're welcome. It takes real courage to be willing to receive support. And knowing that we did not come, if we came on this planet here to do it all ourselves, we wouldn't have anybody else around us. Yeah, so being willing to ask for support requires feeling vulnerable, being open enough to let yourself receive. And that's where that sacral chakra, that beautiful womb area, that creative cauldron, when walls and barriers have been up, then being open will feel incredibly vulnerable, and realizing that you can have boundaries in place. Boundaries, the difference between boundaries and walls and barriers. Walls and barriers put up a barrier, a wall. Can't get through it. Some of them are like Fort Knox. When you have boundaries in place, it's like the membrane of a cell. And when you give clear instructions and everything is functioning well, then what supports the thriving of the cell comes in, and it keeps out what is not supportive. And so the same with us. So you want to give your energetic boundaries permission and instruction to only allow in those frequencies that actually resonate and support the light that you are. And everything else is denied access. Return to sender, go elsewhere. They can return when it resonates. And that's not judgment, that is discerning in resonance. That's a whole other topic. Anyway, have an amazing day, and I look forward to seeing you. Come join us in the Uplifters Nation in our group. And if Elevate Your Frequency is something that would light you up, you go, I'd like to know more, then let's have a chat. Have an amazing day. See you again soon.